The summer after I turned 21, took a job working in the fire lookout tower in northern Montana. At the time, it sounded perfect. I dropped out of college a few months earlier, was broke, and honestly wanted to get away from the people for a while. When I found an ad looking for seasonal fire watchers, I figured it'd be mostly sitting around, reading books, and watching sunsets. The ranger station warned me the tower was isolated. I just didn't understand how isolated until I got there. The tower stood on top of a mountain ridge, surrounded by miles of forest in every direction. Drive up took nearly 3 hours on dirt roads. The last stretch had to be done on foot because the path was too narrow for vehicles. The lookout itself was old, not abandoned old, just forgotten. The wooden stairs creaked constantly, and the whole structure swayed slightly whenever the wind picked up. Inside was a cot, radio, shelves full of weather logs, and windows wrapping around the entire room so I could see the whole forest. The ranger who dropped me off gave me a quick rundown before leaving. Radio check-ins every 4 hours. Watch for smoke. Don't leave the tower after dark unless it's an emergency. I laughed a little when he said the last part, but he didn't. Then he climbed back into his truck and disappeared down the mountain. Just like that, I was alone. The first few days were peaceful. Honestly, beautiful. Every morning the fog rolled in, through the trees beneath the tower like waves across an ocean. During the day, I'd scan the forest with my binoculars, log weather conditions, and read paperbacks whenever nothing was happening. At night, the woods became unbelievably dark. The kind where flashlights feel too small. But after a while, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. The first thing was the footprints. Every morning, there'd be muddy prints around the base of the tower. At first, I assumed they belonged to hikers. But there were never any other tracks leading away from the area. Just footprints circling the tower. Like someone had walked around it repeatedly during the night. I reported it over the radio one afternoon. The ranger just said, "Probably an animal." I remember looking down at the prints while holding the radio. They definitely weren't animal tracks. The second strange thing happened about a week later. Around midnight, I woke up to a metallic sound echoing through the tower. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized it was coming in intervals, slow and rhythmic. I grabbed my flashlight and I looked out one of the windows facing the stairs. Nothing. The forest below was pitch black. The noise stopped immediately. The next morning, I found a lower gate on the tower staircase hanging open. I knew I'd latched it before bed, and after that, I started feeling watched. You know that feeling when someone's staring at you? It became constant, especially near sunset. A few evenings later, I was making coffee when I happened to glance towards the trees west of the tower. And that's when I saw him. There was a figure standing in the tree line, perfectly still. Too far away to make out any details, but definitely human. I remember feeling relieved at first. I actually thought maybe another ranger had come by. I waved. The figure didn't move, didn't wave back, and just stood there, watching the tower. I kept staring maybe 30 seconds before grabbing the binoculars from the desk. When I looked again, the figure was gone. That night was the first time I locked the tower hatch. The next evening, right before sunset, I saw the figure again. Same spot, standing between the trees. Only this time, it looked closer. I tried convincing myself it was paranoia. Isolation can mess with your head. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. But things kept getting worse. 2 nights later, a storm rolled through the mountains. The kind that shakes the entire forest. Rain hammered the windows while thunder echoed across the valley. Around 11 p.m., The radio suddenly filled with static before cutting out completely. I tried calling the ranger station 3 separate times. Nothing. That's when I heard the first step. From below. I froze, and I heard another step, slowly climbing the metal staircase. I remember staring at the floor hatch while the sound continued upward through the storm. The tower swayed slightly with each gust of wind, and somewhere below me, someone was climbing. I grabbed the emergency flare gun from the wall beside the bed. The footsteps kept coming. Then they stopped directly outside the hatch. Complete silence except for rain. I waited for the hatch handle to move. It never did. A minute passed, then another. I don't know how long I stood out there holding the flare gun before I finally worked up the courage to look outside. I shined my flashlight down through the cracks beside the hatch. Nothing. No one was on the stairs. No movement below. And somehow, no sound of anyone coming back down either. I didn't sleep that night. The storm finally cleared just before sunrise. The second it was bright enough outside, I unlocked the hatch and checked the staircase. Once again, there was no footprints. No mud. Nothing. Then I noticed the window beside my cot. There was a handprint pressed against the outside glass. Mud smeared across the edges. The problem was, the handprint was too high to reach up from the staircase outside, at least 7 feet above the platform. I packed my things immediately. When the ranger arrived later that morning, I told him everything. The footprints, the figure, the climbing, and the handprint. He listened quietly the entire time. Then he asked me something that made my stomach drop. He said, "You saw someone standing near the west tree line?" I nodded. And for a few seconds, he just stared out toward the forest, before finally saying, "You're not the first person to report that." I quit the same day. Years later, I tried finding information about the tower online. I found an old forum where former rangers talked about strange experiences there. Most of it sounded like ghost stories, except for one detail. Almost every person mentioned seeing someone standing silently near the trees at sunset, watching the tower, and always getting a little closer each night. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy these scary stories, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dreams are timeless. Why wake up?